Good evening, dear friends. Walking. What is it? Is it just moving the body through space? Or is it a highly coordinated movement that we spend our whole lives learning and trying to perfect? Or is it simply a method of moving from point A to point B? Scientists all over the world have struggled with this mystery and finally it has been solved. The thing is, our walking can be used as an indicator. It reflects how your joints and your muscles work. It's one of the most common movements, except for the movement of the temporomandibular joint when you eat and talk. And eye movement is one of the frequent movements you make in everyday life. Several thousand steps. Imagine they can injure you or they can make you healthier, improve your health and make you younger with every step. So how do you figure this out? First, you need to look at how you walk. Diagnosis is the first step. Place a camera in front of you and walk. Position it roughly at shoulder or eye level. And first, walk toward the camera. Walk with your usual gait, just as you normally do. Walk forward. Then turn around and walk back. Take 2 steps. Then do a side movement. Step to the side. Walk like this in one direction and then in the other direction. Do 2 such movements. And you can repeat this several times. And now, using this initial diagnostic video, you will gradually, step by step, improve your walking. The thing is, because the movement is repeated several thousand times, on the one hand, it reflects the work of your muscles. For example, on one side, my quadratus lumborum and iliopsoas muscles are well developed. On the other side, they're not. And with every step, I'll be leaning over here. If, for example, the muscles on this side are a bit shorter, my leg won't be able to step straight here. I'll go a bit to the side and I'll lean to the side. Let's say my pectoralis minor muscle is shortened and my arms will move backward with different amplitudes. On one side, it will make this kind of movement. On the other side, I won't even notice it. So one of my arms will go farther back and the other one will move less. Sometimes one arm straightens out during a step, while the other arm stays slightly bent. One arm moves like this, the other at this angle. Or one goes forward, the other goes inward, like this. The head is sometimes slightly tilted and one shoulder is slightly turned. And your task is to watch a video and identify all these elements of the step, because people often only pay attention to the foot. That is, what a person themselves notices is which part of the foot they step on, where their weight is on the foot, where the sole wears out, and how their foot is turned. That's what concerns them the most. Or, for example, something gets tense or hurts during the step. Everything above that, as if doesn't participate in walking for them, where their hand is doesn't concern them. But very often, it's the movement of the arms that actually provides our balance. It won't be good enough for me if my arm goes back here. I'll lose my balance with every step. It'll be hard for me to keep my balance and my leg will get tired because of my arm. Can you imagine? Yeah. Now, your task is to watch yourself in slow motion and pay attention to what stands out to you. Izaruki. Which movements seem wrong? You can write all of this in the comments if you're not shy. And we'll see what everyone notices. And now we're going to restore all of this step by step. Right now, here with you. We'll work on the first stage of recovery, one of them. So Friends, let's start our exercise to restore the biomechanics of stepping and to use walking as intended. So, as you already know from scientific sources, our walking reflects the work of all our muscles, and we can use it as a diagnostic tool to understand what is working and what is not. But we can also use it to correct certain things to evenly distribute the load on our muscles. That is for training. We can train each muscle separately, but we can also use it additionally during walking and use walking as a workout. So friends, the first diagnostic. First, we need to understand what's wrong with us, what moves correctly, what doesn't, and what we need to fix. The first thing you'll be watching for, you can record yourself on video, or, of course, you can look in the mirror, but you might make a mistake, so it's better to record yourself on video. Set up your phone or camera, preferably higher up. Don't film yourself from below. Ideally, it should be at shoulder level, and record yourself walking forward from the front. Also, record yourself from behind as you walk away from the camera and then come closer, move away, and maybe from the side as well. But right now, what we need is footage of you walking forward toward the camera and then turning around and walking away from the camera. These two types. So, the first thing to pay attention to is the movement of your shoulders. What are the possible options? Here, during the step, one shoulder rises while the other lowers like this. This is roughly what you might see. One option is that it happens almost the same way, meaning on one side it goes down, on the other it goes down. One goes down, so one rises, the other lowers. From the back, it looks something like this. One goes down, two goes down. Then, when you record yourself on video, you can watch it all in slow motion. Slow down the speed and see how it happens more slowly, because at your usual walking speed, you might not notice these movements. And the second option, which is more common, on one side this tilt happens, and on the other side it almost doesn't, meaning on one side the shoulder tilts, normal, and on the other side it's more or less normal. It can be either on the right or on the left, so it can be like this, tilt and back, tilt and back. What could this tell us? First, we need to rule out weakness in the calf muscle. What does our calf muscle do? It's active when we stand on our toes. Here it tenses up. But actually, there are two muscles there, the soleus muscle and the calf muscle. They both work together, but probably the soleus muscle does most of the work in this movement. And at the moment, look, when one of our legs is in front and the other is behind, the leg that's behind starts to rise onto the toes during the step. So this is the position we end up in. And if my calf muscle isn't developed well enough, my center of gravity will shift to the front leg too quickly. That means I'll help myself with the movement of my core muscles, the oblique abdominal muscles, and maybe the quadratus lumborum muscle. So I'll lean toward my front leg to make it easier for my calf muscle, which can't handle the load, and that's why my center of gravity shifts this way. So it looks something like this. So I put my foot down, and at this moment my back leg should be on the toe. I need to stay in this position for a fraction of a second. But because my calf muscle here is weak, the gastrocnemius and soleus, I practically don't have this phase of the step, and as soon as my heel starts to lift, I immediately lean to this side, meaning I make it easier for the leg behind me to work by leaning like this. Over time, this movement becomes so pronounced. Well, frequent. Well, because just imagine you take 10,000 steps a day. That's 10,000 of these kinds of movements you basically make to the side. And sometimes it happens. The right side muscles become enlarged. We can see the difference. The muscle ridge here may be more developed. This means the quadratus lumborum muscle is stronger here. Here, there will be part of the oblique abdominal muscles and the iliopsoas muscles on the right side. On the left side, they will be smaller in volume. And if we look at the calf muscle, there will also be a difference in them. So, on the right side, for example, we don't have this tilt. That is when I stand on my toes here. My right leg is on tiptoe. You see, I don't have a tilt. At this moment, if there was weakness in the calf muscle, then when I stood on my toes, I would lean over here to help my calf muscle. What should we do if we find such a problem? That is, if you saw it in your video. Here is the tilt to one side or alternately to both sides. The first thing is training the calf muscle. To start, you just need to make it stronger. The simplest exercise is to stand on your toes. Hold on to something with your hands. You can use a table or a wall. But for example, if you hold on to a table, the load will be a little less. And at this moment, you stand on your toes. There can be two ways to perform this exercise. You can put more load on the inner part of your foot and your big toe, meaning you rely more on your big toe, not on the toe itself, but on the ball of the foot under it. At the moment when you rise onto your toes, or you can use the rest of your foot, which means your movement will be at a slight angle, You need to practice both. Put the load on the big toe, and also on the other toes, shifting more toward the pinky side. This determines which part of your calf muscle will be loaded. That is, when you rise onto your toes and put more weight on this area right here, the inner part of your calf muscle will work more. This one right here. If you stand and put more weight on this part right here, then the load will be greater on the outer part and the soleus muscle. Well, the soleus works in both cases, but this part gets more involved in the movement. If it's hard to control what you're leaning on, you can just change the position of your feet. If you place your feet closer together like this, it will be easier to lean on. These four toes here. If you place your foot wider and stand on your toes like this, it will be easier to lean on your big toe. If you want a bit more load, then there will be less weight. Well, sort of you shift it forward. You can use the wall for support, for example. That is not too much, just hold on lightly. So your first exercise is like this. Here we're training the calf muscle. You can also notice if there's a difference between your right and left muscles. One is a bit stronger, the other is weaker. So one will get tired faster, while the other will be a bit stronger and will handle more load. The next step is to make sure that when you step, you don't shift your center of gravity onto your front leg too early. There's an exercise for this. We take a roller, place it near the wall, and put it against the area of the front upper iliac bone, right here. on the pelvis. You place it right here in this spot. So you place it like this and put one leg forward and the other one back. And now your task is to put your foot on the toe and bend it at the knee. If you put your leg straight, your pelvis will kind of rise, see, because right now it can't move forward, because the roller is blocking that movement. If our leg is straight and we put it on the toe, then our pelvis will move forward like this. But here, you see there's an obstacle, so it can't move forward. And that's why, in order to put our foot on the toe, we need to bend the leg at the knee, like this. The length of the roller doesn't really matter here. It's needed just to keep your pelvis fixed. So, you've placed it, pressed it with your pelvis, and your task is to put the back leg on the toe. Not to get it on the toe, you need to bend it at the knee. Right here you see. And if it's hard to do, at first it can be almost impossible to lift it here. Don't put the leg that's in front of you too close to the wall. Place it a little farther from the wall and stand closer yourself. That way it'll be easier to do this movement. Dot. If it starts to work out more or less, then put your foot closer to the wall and repeat the same thing. You can lift it up and hold it. Dot. And the most difficult position is when you put the front part or the toes of the leg that's in front of you against the wall, pretty much. Here it depends on the length of the roller. The longer it is, the more you can make this exercise harder. That is, you can make the distance between your legs bigger. If it's bigger, it will be harder to do. Try it. Doing this with different roller lengths increases the load on your back leg. At this moment, we lift up, lower down, lift up, lower down. We're doing this movement. What does it develop? It develops the ability to stand on your toes, Satne tu Zaid Onohu, and at the same time, your leg gets used to handling the load and doesn't shift the weight to the opposite side too early. So with this movement, you're training your leg, and at the same time, you're breaking the habit of putting your foot on your toes with a straight leg, E, because there are a lot of problems exactly during this step, because the leg that's behind is straight and you put it on your toes. You start to push your pelvis forward excessively. There are ways of stepping where we can put the back foot on the toes, but in that case, we need to make the step long enough. And at the moment, when our back foot is on the toes, we need the front foot to be on the heel. But such a step is quite energy consuming and rather labor intensive. And very often it happens that the foot lands on the toes. But at the same time, the front foot has already fully lowered and the pelvis starts to move forward excessively. At this moment, the lower back gets overloaded a lot. So here, you need to make sure that when your foot lands on the toes, it bends so that you can move forward afterward. So basically this movement, when we put our foot on the toes, is not meant to push us forward. You are not to push the pelvis forward, but to push the leg forward. So this is the movement. When we put our foot on the toes, the knee bends, and from this position, it's easier for the iliopsoas muscle to bring the leg forward. If we put our straight leg on the toes, it will be very difficult to bring the leg forward from this position, because the next movement, in any case, we will have to bend the leg. If we don't bend it, if it's straight, how can we move it forward? Only by moving it to the side. If we tilt like this, That's why in any case we need to bend it here, and it's better to combine this bending with placing the foot on the toes. And when we do this together, the iliopsoas muscle will move our leg forward with the next movement and everything will be fine. So you practice these two movements to the right and to the left. You start with an easier version when your foot is not so close to the wall. And you do this movement to the right and to the left, and you finish by placing your front foot almost right up against the wall. So your task is to learn to stand in such a way that you are on your bent leg, standing on your toes. You should be able to support your body weight so that you don't end up leaning like this when you're moving, when you're in motion. This is the first stage. Next, we practiced turning the torso, which also needs to be trained separately. You need to train it, combine it with the movement of the arms. In other words, you practice this movement separately. First, you touch the wall with your shoulders, and then you add the movement of the arms to it. We will practice this separately again, and then you also need to learn how to combine them. This is the position we've just been practicing together. So this is the torso rotation we had here in this position when the legs were together, this torso rotation. Now you need to combine it with the position where the back foot is on the toe. And here you need to practice doing the rotation. It's better to train it both ways at first, this way and that way. Here one foot is in front, the other foot is in front. Then you can add the arm movement here, your torso turns and your arm goes back. This is necessary so that during the step, everything combines with the torso rotation. So, these two movements, placing the foot on the toe, should happen together with the torso rotation, like this. So you can combine them gradually. These two movements, at first it's better to practice each one separately, and then during movement, during the step, then they will happen together for you. So, after you learn to keep your weight on the foot that's on the tiptoe, you add a turn of the torso, and you need to learn to do these two movements together. The torso turns toward the foot that's on the tiptoe. That is, you have right hand, right leg. They should end up behind at the end of this movement. And from this movement, I then shift my weight onto the front leg and the back leg. It will go forward further, but in the exercise, we will lift it up here at the same time, so that we also train stability on the supporting leg. So here, we end up combining several movements. The first movement is the foot goes up on the toe, while the position of the pelvis doesn't change. So the leg bends for this. The second movement is the arm on the same side as the leg. Here it goes back, right here. And the third movement, keeping the position of the arms, we bring the leg forward like this. So this is a training exercise. In the step, all of this will happen in one movement. And then, when the foot touches the floor, this leg will almost immediately lift up like this. But in the step, it won't go this high. The movement will be much smaller, and at the same time, the arm will have time to move back like this. So here, if you noticed, the movement of the torso is different from how people usually start doing it, trying to turn the torso during the step. Because usually, here's what happens. That's how they usually start training. So, when you get the urge to add a torso turn to the step, people start doing it like this. So, the torso is turned at the moment you push off with your foot, and you get this kind of movement. So, the back foot is on the toe, and at the moment of the push off, the torso turns, and you end up with this unnatural movement. So, when a person suddenly, for some reason, wants to add this torso turn, and he starts combining it with the wrong leg movement, and he ends up with this kind of unnatural movement, this turn becomes very noticeable. This is not a very good movement, but if it matches the movement of the legs correctly, it's almost invisible because it becomes a natural movement. And here is this turn. We need it to make it easier to move the leg forward, meaning every movement in a step has its purpose. For example, placing the foot on the toe. It's needed so that later the thigh can move forward more easily. Like this, the turn of the torso is needed to create momentum so that the leg can move forward more easily. On one side, strike like this. For example, when you kick the ball, to get your leg forward, you help yourself with your arm like this, and by turning your torso. The same thing happens when you take a step, practically. And having your arm behind you allows you to keep your balance while standing on one leg. In other words, all your balance. Basically, it's done by using your torso and certain movements with your arms. And you need to make sure that when your leg is in front like this, your arm is already here. If your arm isn't here, it will be very hard to keep your balance, and you'll have to put too much strain on your supporting leg. If my arm is here, it's much easier for me to stay on one leg in this position. That's why I need this arm to be in this position with every step. And it will only make it if this torso rotation starts at the same time as the heel lift. So these two movements should happen almost simultaneously. So at the moment when my heel starts to lift off, my arm should already be moving back here. But if I try to push myself with a straight leg, I'll lose my balance every time. Here, I'll either have to strain my back excessively, and as long as my back muscles can handle it, my back will keep getting tired all the time. But when the muscles can't take it anymore, I'll end up injuring it too. That's why every movement we make needs to be in sync. For that, we need coordination. So this exercise is more about coordination than muscle strength. Well, my friends,